This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace. You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, wherever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance? No problem. Now get $80 off of your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
You're listening to the Health Courage Collective podcast, episode 104. Is unrecognized stress making you weak? Welcome to the Health Courage Collective podcast, the show for women who are too busy to slog through hours of generalized, inapplicable, and often contradictory health information, but too smart to ignore that a few minutes of focused attention now can prevent years of suffering in the future. I'm your host, Christina Hackett, a pharmacist who doesn't want you to live on prescriptions, a certified coach specifically trained to maximize your potential, and a compulsive learner obsessed with preventative, cutting-edge, holistic, and integrative medicine. I'm on a mission to increase your physical and mental resilience so you can fearlessly look forward to your next 40-plus limitless years. Your time is now. Let's go. Hello, my friend. How are you today? I hope everything is great in your world. I am so excited to get to spend a few minutes with you today. How are your improv skills? Improv is fun, but it also offers some truly valuable insights into how to live a better and more fulfilling life. Today, we're going to talk about setting yourself up to age well by getting your stress right. We often hear about how bad stress is and that it's killing us, etc. We talked about stress in episode 35. If you remember from that episode, then you know that I don't think that thinking of stress as a monster coming to get you serves you very well. There's a quote I love from Aaron Antonovsky. I don't know who he is, but it says, "Focusing on health, I expressly reject the implicit assumption that stressors are inherently pathogenic. Their health consequences can only be understood if we understand the coping process." End quote. I also love Kelly McGonigal, who wrote a book called The Upside of Stress. She says, "The latest science reveals that stress can make you smarter, stronger, and more successful. It helps you learn and grow. It can even inspire courage and compassion. The new science also shows that changing your mind about stress can make you healthier and happier. How you think about stress affects everything from your cardiovascular health to your ability to find meaning in life. The best way to manage stress isn't to reduce or avoid it, but rather to rethink and even embrace it." End quote. She's awesome and explains that your response to stress is what determines whether it's detrimental to your health. If you have a threat response to stress, believing that the demands of the situation exceed your ability to deal with it, you will have a threat response. But if you believe you have the resources to succeed, you have a challenge response. People in a flow state are in a challenge response mode. Artists, athletes, surgeons, video gamers, they all have this kind of challenge response to stress. The stress makes them better and is actually highly enjoyable at the same time that it's stressful. You've probably felt this way before, right? I can think of lots of stressful situations that were also awesome because it was a test of ability and an opportunity to rise to the challenge. Concerts, performances, tests, speeches, races, they wouldn't have been so incredible if they hadn't been stressful, but only if you feel like you're up to the challenge to some degree. Back in episode 35, we mostly talked about my favorite kind of stress, hormesis. Do you remember hormesis? It's a process where a potentially detrimental stress is delivered in just the right dose to induce a favorable biological response. It's awesome. Do you remember any of the hormetic stressors we talked about? Heat. Too much will kill or severely damage you, but just the right amount of heat makes you stronger, like from a sauna. Cold, same deal. That's why people do cold plunges and cryotherapy. Hypoxia, hyperoxia, breath holding, or hyperbaric chambers can stress your body for the better as long as they're not done at a dose that will kill you or give you a brain injury. Hunger is an awesome stress for getting your body to clean up waste products and make you stronger for longer. Then, of course, there's that one thing that can raise your blood pressure, create muscle inflammation, and make you gasp for air, called exercise. At the right dose, exercise is so good for you. Go back and listen to episode 35 if you want to know more about hormesis and how you can use stress in fun ways to create more future years lived in good health. Another benefit of these short-term hormetic stressors is that the short bursts of high stress with a definite immediate endpoint actually help relieve chronic long-term stress. Kind of weird that if you're stressed about your spreadsheets or your inbox or your teenager or your aging parent, a good way to alleviate that stress is to stress yourself way more in a kickboxing workout, but it totally works. So, stress. It does a body good. Sometimes. Physical stress in short bursts at controlled doses, and psychological stress that challenges us to step up and prove to ourselves what we're capable of. That's how I like to think about stress, and I think it's helpful. But something I hadn't thought too much about until recently is sneaky stress. Stress that we're not even aware of. What? You've probably heard of your sympathetic nervous system, kind of your fight or flight system. It's awesome for getting you through short periods of high stress, but it should not be turned on all the time. Chronic sympathetic nervous system stimulation alters your circadian rhythms, increases inflammation, makes you more vulnerable to illnesses, shrinks your brain, makes you more resistant to insulin, raises your blood pressure, and depresses your mood. It sets you up nicely for chronic disease. We already know that we don't want this. We want our parasympathetic nervous system firing more often than not, which is our rest and digest system that leads to good digestion, circadian rhythms, fertility, social engagement, and feelings of satisfaction and pleasure. Hey, I just wanted to quickly interrupt and ask if you really love your protein bars. If not, you might want to check out Built Bars. Built Bars have 15 to 19 grams of protein from whey and only 130 to 180 calories and 48 grams of sugar per bar, depending on what flavor you choose. They're so good. I eat one almost every day. Every flavor is covered in real chocolate and they taste like a candy bar, as long as you've never tasted a real candy bar before. Just kidding. I'm totally kidding. They may not be quite as decadent as your favorite candy bar, but they're seriously good, especially for 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar. They have tons of flavors and textures to choose from. I always order the 18-bar variety box plus a box of whatever's new or strikes my fancy. My favorite is peanut butter brownie, but the seasonal candy cane brownie is awesome when it's that time of year, and the cookie dough and cherry barcia are so good too. If you want to give them a try, there's a link in the show notes that will get you 15% off your first order as my gift to you. You can't go wrong. Okay, back to the episode. We are made to be able to adapt to changes and overall still maintain homeostasis, this stable equilibrium where everything is in balance. Homeostasis is maintained in the face of demands on our bodies by something called allostasis, or rather, allodynamic adaptation. This would be like, it's normal for your skin barrier on your feet to be intact and healthy. If you start repeatedly wearing shoes that rub off some of your skin and create an injury that pathogens could potentially enter, your body's allostatic response is to lay down more and thicker skin cells there in the form of a callus to get back to homeostasis via allostasis. We adapt to demands via allostasis, which is a beautiful thing, but the price to pay for that adaptation is called the allostatic load. When we are resilient and we have reserves of resources available, we can recover from each deposit in our allostatic load and get on with our day. Our allostatic load is the cumulative burden of stressors we encounter. If you think of your allostatic capacity like a bucket that gets drained at a rate of 20 drops per hour, as long as you don't get more than 20 drops of allostatic load stressors deposited into your bucket every hour, you're totally fine. But if you start getting more than 20 drops per hour flowing into your bucket, your allostatic capacity will eventually overflow, which is called allostatic overload. If you get into allostatic overload, your body systems start to function suboptimally because that adaptation to external stressors to get back to homeostasis isn't happening. We're meant to have short bursts of stressors that go away quickly, and we're set up nicely to be able to deal with those. Major life stressors can definitely make significant contributions to our allostatic load, but most of us don't even realize that we're getting a few drops in our bucket here and there from very low-level stressors that we didn't even know existed in our lives. So then over time, we have no idea that we're running the risk of overflowing into allostatic overload, especially if a bigger stressor crops up. We think we're fine, but our bodies have been busy dealing with a bunch of little nervous system stimulants that we didn't even realize were there or were potentially problematic. There's a medical theory called GUTS, which stands for Generalized Unsafety Theory of Stress. You can see what you think of it. I only learned about it recently. Our brain is constantly scanning our environment for threats, and we're only able to truly relax and recharge and empty our allostatic load when we feel safe. Makes sense, right? We're not going to be running on rest and digest mode if we're under threat. We wouldn't survive if we were constantly watching YouTube smoky eye tutorials or hanging out by the pool while a hired assassin is sneaking around trying to kill us. I know that I'm so lucky and privileged due to no merit of my own in a lot of ways. I would love to be part of creating a world of more equality, safety, and opportunity for everyone. It's a big deal. But for today, I'm just saying that I feel safe almost all the time, or I thought I did. I almost never feel out and out under attack. So I would have thought that this GUTS model doesn't really apply to me. But what I learned is that we're evolved to feel safe by default as part of a group and when everything is going well. So just living in our modern environment constantly contributes little drops of feelings of unsafety. Living alone or traveling alone contributes. Feeling lonely or isolated, even with other humans in physical proximity to us, contributes to feelings of unsafety. Our bodies interpret loneliness as a danger, whether we know it or not. It's a primitive pain signal. Loneliness is actually a huge health threat across the board these days. Lonely people have lower heart rate variability, which we talked about in episode 23, which means that they are physically less able to adapt to stress. It's a big deal and nothing to be ashamed of. Our nervous system is constantly on increased alert if we don't feel deeply connected to a community, which is super common these days. We're wired to contribute and help one another and to know that we will be helped if a need arises. But our modern lifestyles are very isolating. It's not your fault. My husband sent me a text a few weeks ago that said he wanted me to do a podcast episode on skin hunger. Have you heard of this? I think he just thought it would be a podcast title that people would be interested in clicking on. Like, I just got a book that I'm very excited about called Power, Sex, and Suicide by Nick Lane. The title sounds like, oh, what's this? But it's actually a very biochemistry-heavy, scientifically technical book about mitochondria. And skin hunger is just that biological need we have for human touch, or I would say living touch. Touch is a powerful safety signal to your body. Even the touch of a pet can help flip your safety switch. So, if you've been thinking about getting a litter box trained indoor pet bunny, it could help decrease your allostatic load. I really want one, but I also really don't. My family and I all went to this baby animal farm festival thing last week, and they had the cutest baby bunnies, like little fuzzy marshmallows. I loved them so much. And we spent a long time brushing baby cows and petting baby goats and sheep. Oh, and I milked a goat, so that was living touch. Then there's the news. Fear sells, so fear-based stories are promoted and shared. And even if we don't think they affect us, knowing that a kid at a daycare could be shot in the head at any moment by a guy trying to keep birds off his newly planted crops can subconsciously make us feel a little bit unsafe. That's a real story I saw on the news yesterday. The tricky thing is that we can't completely ignore safety advice or warnings. We need to know the dangers of things or we could end up worse off. But the fear-mongering and I believe the constant nature of news coming at us can add to our feelings of unsafety. My personal unsubstantiated theory is that if you were to watch the news once a day at 6 o'clock p.m., it would be better than getting a little scary story every 2 hours all throughout the day. I personally don't really pay attention to any news at all. I really like it, but acknowledge that it might not be the best strategy because I'm generally pretty clueless. I love this passage from Kelly McGonigal's book, The Upside of Stress. Stress caused by the news, as opposed to stress caused by your life, is unique in its ability to trigger a sense of hopelessness. Watching TV news after a natural disaster or terrorist attack has consistently been shown to increase the risk of developing depression or post-traumatic stress disorder. One shocking study found that people who watched 6 or more hours of news about the 2013 Boston Marathon bombing were more likely to develop post-traumatic stress symptoms than the people who were actually at the bombing and personally affected by it. It's not just traditional news programs that instill fear and hopelessness. Stories of tragedy, trauma, and threats dominate many forms of media. In fact, a 2014 study of U.S. adults found that the single best predictor of people's fear and anxiety was how much time they spent watching TV talk shows. End quote. I just think that's so fascinating. As awful as it would be to be present at a terrorist attack, it's actually more traumatizing to watch extensively about it on the news. And the single biggest predictor of anxiety is how much time you spend watching talk shows. I imagine that would translate to online forums and social media threads or anything with that, sensationalized, argumentative feel to it. Kelly McGonigal teaches that the 3 things that make stress harmful to us rather than helpful are 1, you feel inadequate to it. 2, it isolates you from others. And 3, it feels meaningless or hopeless. I think the talk show vibe checks all those boxes. You don't walk away feeling deeply connected to other humans or empowered to use your talents to rise to the challenge and make a more positive impact on the world afterward. Something else we don't think of as reducing our ability to bounce back from stress is the environment we live in. It just is what it is. Living or working in dangerous urban environments can add to our allostatic load without us realizing it. We should be on alert and situationally aware and ready to respond to protect ourselves if the need arises. That's a good thing. But if we feel endangered on a regular basis, that adds to our feelings of unsafety. So do angry family members or even loving family members who just require a lot of attention from us. There are studies that show that mothers of special needs children age faster. They're literally sacrificing their life force to provide life to a helpless human. And it's one of the highest, holiest things I think anyone can do. But there are things that the moms can do to lighten their own stress burdens so that they're even more resilient and ready to help more at the highest level. Also, tyrannical bosses and hostile coworkers can add to our stress bucket. Certainly, abuse is humongously stressful, and kind of like lack of touch feels unsafe without us realizing it. Lack of nature sends a signal to our body that we are unsafe. Maybe instead of a skin hunger episode, I'm going to do a leaf hunger episode or something. But then I guess it would just sound like people who crave lettuce. But it's true that getting out in nature sends subconscious safety signals to your body. We've talked about Shinrin-yoku several times in the past. Get your dose of forest bathing and you will feel more relaxed. Another environmental factor that can stress your body without you knowing is noise pollution. Increasing the amount of sensory stimuli that your brain has to filter through to be able to hear possible signs of danger adds to your stress bucket. So all those office sounds at work could be subconsciously stressing you out. We are evolved to be connected to one another and connected to nature in natural environments with long periods of silence. There's a quote from a nature photographer named Peter McBride that says, "Silence is not the absence of sound, it's the absence of noise." And I love that because hearing the breeze through the leaves or a bird chirping or a stream flowing is very different than hearing traffic and airplanes and sirens and jackhammers and leaf blowers and TV news and on and on and on. We're also evolved to be exposed to very specific wavelengths of light at very specific times of day. So messing that up is stressful without us knowing, as are exposing ourselves to electromagnetic fields all the time, like we talked about a couple weeks ago in episodes 101 and 102. Little pieces of unseen stress start adding up. And of course, air, soil, and water pollution add chemical stress to our bodies that needs to be detoxified, which adds to our bucket. More obvious but certainly dangerous additions to our feelings of unsafety are financial uncertainty, discrimination, and racism. It's heartbreaking and horrible that we still have racism and discrimination in our society, and in addition to all of the problems it causes victims, it also unfairly adds to their allostatic stress burden, which is terrible. All kinds of traumas can be adding to our stress burdens without us realizing it. Dr. Molly Maloof talks about big T traumas and little t traumas, which I think is a good distinguisher. We would all encourage anyone with big T traumas to work with professionals to find healing. But we can all have little t traumas that people, including ourselves, don't think should have affected us. But they did. They made us feel unsafe in some way, and that stuck with us without us realizing it. You can find lengthy discussions about adverse childhood experiences and how they continue to affect you and add to your stress burden as an adult. The last thing I want to talk about that can add to a general sense of unsafety that I hadn't previously thought much about, but I can see it so clearly now, and it means so much to me, is your physical health. If your body isn't able to operate at optimal levels, it's subconsciously stressful. What if an unforeseen emergency crops up? You feel a little less safe if you know you're not up to possible physical challenges that might arise. I love emergency and disaster preparedness type stuff. My kids think I want to bury a shipping crate in our backyard to serve as a bug out shelter in the case of an apocalypse, but I don't. Well, I kind of do, but I don't think it's our highest leverage act. Anyhow, I think learning about and preparing for potential disasters is important. It feels comforting to know that if the crap hit the fan, you've already got what you need. We saw this a little bit during COVID. There was this whole toilet paper fiasco, but in Utah, we also had an earthquake right at the height of COVID lockdown, and they had to station police officers outside the grocery stores because people lost their minds. But I knew that I had months worth of provisions to be able to take care of my family, so I had no reason to lose my mind or interact with those who did. It was very peaceful, or rather, just a complete non-issue for me. So it is with your body. I want you to be healthy and strong for my own personal selfish reasons. I want to live in a world with strong women of conviction who are out there making this world a better place in a big way. If you missed episode 100 about how to be more driven, go back and listen to that one for sure, because we talked about how the way to drive yourself forward and discover what you're meant to do in this world is to start by attending to your physical health. In addition to clarity and conviction, when you know your body is up to certain challenges, it increases your confidence and instinctual sense of safety. If you aren't capable of running away or fighting, you're unknowingly adding to your stress bucket. If you have low fitness, reduced mobility, frailty, or any combination of factors that make you feel more fragile than resilient, you're adding to your stress bucket. You never know when you might need to jump out of the way of a car, hide under a desk, crawl out from under some rubble, balance walk across a beam, carry a bucket of water, lift a fallen tree branch, carry a child to safety, tread water for a prolonged period of time, go without food for a few days, pull yourself up onto something, scramble to higher ground, hang from something, run from someone, break someone's arm, choke someone out, or walk for 30 miles in the snow. Subconsciously knowing that if things go haywire, you can do what it takes to stay safe yourself and protect the people you care about gives you a subconscious sense of safety. This is how I think of confidence. Confidence to me is not believing that everything will go well, but believing that whatever happens, I'll be able to handle it. I am nobody special at all, and I have a long way to go and lots of goals yet to achieve, but I do think that my generalized sense of unsafety is lowered by the fact that I know I can bend into some strange positions. I can pick up some really heavy stuff. I can climb a rope, walk for a long time, go without food, do some pull-ups, carry heavy stuff, win a hands-up, stand-up contest, incapacitate an attacker, grow my own potatoes, befriend a chicken, bake banana bread with no electricity, and I guess now I can milk a goat. So obviously, nobody is perfectly good at everything, and we don't all need to become Navy SEALs or Bear Grylls survivalist people. But decreasing your overall allostatic load and sense of unsafety is a great reason to continue to work on your physical health. Your body feels better when it's being taken care of, but so does your soul. or your mind, or however you want to think about that. Taking care of your physical body helps you discover what is most important to you and helps you drive forward into the unknown. It helps you be more of who you are and prepares you to serve others in a bigger way. And it decreases your allostatic load by imparting a sense of safety. People in allostatic overload, because their bucket is filling up with stress faster than it can be drained with recovery, can experience headaches, ringing in the ears, indigestion, stomach aches, dizziness, back pain, tight neck and shoulders, TMJ, restlessness, tiredness, compulsive behaviors, feeling powerless, edgy, overwhelmed, having a lack of creativity, inability to make decisions, constant worry, forgetfulness, cynicism, apathy, intolerance, hiding, nagging, distrust, and disconnection from others. And more, I'm sure. We do want some life challenges for sure, as we talked about a few weeks ago in episode 99. Too much comfort can be bad for us. Overcoming obstacles is literally what makes us stronger. But chronic, unrelenting stressors can weaken us over time, especially if we have no idea that they're there. Lack of physical fitness, unresolved traumas, light pollution, noise pollution, air pollution, electro pollution, soil pollution, racism, discrimination, toxic people, loneliness, nature deficiency, not belonging to a group, and watching TV news can all add to our allostatic load and push us closer to the tipping point where we'll get to a place where it's all too much. If you can discover and resolve any hidden stressors, you can lower your overall stress burden and free up a bunch of energy that you could be using for something way more fun than subconsciously trying to protect yourself from danger. So, what do you think you can do? What's your biggest lever to pull here? Maybe it's loneliness. Maybe it's lack of physical fitness or a hostile coworker. It might take some time to start chipping away at that, but it's worth it. What's the lowest hanging fruit? Could you easily go outside for a few minutes? Turn off the news? Find a quiet place? I'd invite you to think about what could possibly be your hidden stressors and how you can free up some energy by decreasing those. It will make you more resilient to the inevitable stressors that come along that you can't control. We're going to talk about some stress reduction strategies coming up shortly, but I think it's useful not to think of them as simply a way to not explode when you're frantic and frazzled. I rarely feel like that. So if you're like me, you might be tempted to think you don't need a bunch of stress management ideas. But if you realize that there are little stressors that are filling up your stress bucket without you even realizing it and stealing a little bit of your energy, you can think of them more as ways to add back a little bit of energy and make you more resilient and ready for the next unexpected pressure that will certainly crop up at some point. Thank you so much for being here today. You are so awesome. Next week, we're going to talk about what science says is the fastest way to change. Until then, discover the little subconscious stressors that you didn't know were there, and don't be normal. Thank you so much for tuning into the Health Courage Collective podcast. I am truly honored that you have paid me the enormous compliment of your time and attention. I would be so grateful if you would share this podcast with someone you know and subscribe so you never miss an episode. This podcast is for entertainment and information purposes only. Statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Christina Hackett and producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse events by use of information contained herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.